right, good afternoon, everybody. This is Jen Carty. I'm the Associate Director of Career Services and Employer Relations here in the Pamplin College of Business. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I have representatives from both NetApp and SAS on the line. Kayla and Stephanie are here to take some very valuable time out of their day to present with you all some information about not only their companies, but really how you can be successful in preparing for a job fair. And so I did want to let everyone know that I will be recording this presentation so that we may share it with students later. But if you have any questions at any point during the presentation, please feel free to send those through via chat, and we'll make sure that they get answered at some point either during or after Kayla and Stephanie have presented. So Kayla and Stephanie, I will go ahead and turn things over to you at this point. Thanks so much for being here with us.
Of course. Yeah, thank you so much for having us. I know Stephanie and I are both very excited to speak to you today and also represent two companies that interact in a very interesting way. So it's very fun to have kind of a dual employer presentation today. But to begin, I figured we'd start by introducing ourselves. And my name's Kayla Wojtkowski, and I manage a new team here at SAS that's responsible for our university outreach and recruitment. And I am personally an NC State alum, but have spent quite a bit of time over there at Virginia Tech's campus. Go Hokies, and definitely looking forward to speaking with you all today.
Yes, absolutely. And to reiterate exactly what Kayla just said, we're very, very excited. And my name is Stephanie Chalk, and I work for NetApp, and I'm our campus manager. And so I manage our relationships on and off campus, and Virginia Tech is one that I manage very closely. Most of you, if you haven't met me before, you likely will be meeting me, especially this fall, at a variety of different campus events that we'll be attending and or hosting. So again, welcome, and we are so excited to be here.
Very good.
Awesome. So just a quick overview of what we are going to talk about today, and feel free to, again, ask any questions that you may need throughout through the chat function, and we'll make sure to get those answered prior to us leaving today. But we're going to start with an introduction of some of the big data players and how NetApp and SAS fit into that, but also how you can think about it from a career perspective as well. And that leads into career fair etiquette. As the career fair is right upon us, we're going to give you some tips and tricks that we've seen that are really, really helpful for students. Also, avoiding that black hole, we're going to touch on the black hole that is inevitable, and you're probably already hearing about it, and just wondering how can my resume and how can I get recognized and not fall into that black hole. Also, in addition to that, how to stand out and make yourself unique, because there are so many people that are applying to these roles. How can you stand out and be unique? Interviewing 101, and then, of course, plenty of time for questions. So as we can see here, this slide is big data. And what does big data mean? We probably talk about it. You see the words. You see a bunch of the smaller words as well. Big data is being generated by everything around us at all times. If you can think about every digital process, probably any social media exchange that you've made just within the past 24 hours, and then you multiply that by billions of people, you can truly imagine the amount of data that we're creating and then we're also needing to store on a global level. And it's pretty inconceivable. So this is definitely where NetApp and SAS come into play. The importance of big data doesn't necessarily always revolve around how much data we are creating, even though it is a lot. Rather, it's how can it be stored efficiently and effectively and securely, and then also what you can take away from the data to find answers that enable cost reductions, time reductions, new product development, and smart decision making for organizations and companies around the globe. So as you can see, big data analytics, storage, all very important components of what makes NetApp and SAS a really key player in here. So I'll start just with a brief introduction about NetApp, and then I'll turn it over to Kayla to do the same for SAS. So NetApp, you guys may not recognize that logo, and so I'll start with a few examples. The few examples that I like to mention are, have you downloaded music from Apple recently? Have you watched the NFL, or are you getting excited to be watching the NFL here pretty soon on a variety of different devices? Or maybe you have played or will be playing fantasy football. Have you played Guitar Hero or watched the movie Avatar? And so, of course, if you answer yes to one of those or maybe all of them, then you have utilized NetApp's products and solutions. So NetApp overall is we are a data management and storage provider. So like I mentioned, we're doing a lot of the storing so that SAS can come in and do a lot of the analyzing, and that's what Kayla will be talking about here in just a second. And NetApp is an organization around the world, and many people count on us for their software, their systems, and their services to manage and store their data. We are recognized as a Fortune 500 company that's headquartered out of Sunnyvale, California, but have about 150 offices around the world. And we're really focused on delivering value to our employees, most importantly, along with our customers, partners, and the broader communities that we're a part of. So after that, I will now turn it over to Kayla to do a brief introduction of SAS as well.
Thank you, Stephanie. Yeah, that was such a great overview, and she set me up so perfectly in that the data first needs to be stored, and that is exactly where NetApp comes in. And then where SAS comes in is really helping to turn that big data into information so that companies or individuals or professors or whoever is utilizing SAS software can make decisions based on that big data. So Stephanie mentioned it so perfectly too, that data is growing and it's only getting larger, especially when you think about aspects like wearable devices, and you know, now it's almost like your smart home is creating data every single second. All of these different aspects are then needing to be analyzed. So what SAS does specifically, and we work in over 91 of the top 100 Fortune companies to take their big, large-scale data and turn that into information. So I'll give you a couple examples. In the banking industry, I'm not sure if you've ever had that instance, or maybe your parents have, where you're traveling outside of the state in which you live. Maybe you're planning a nice family trip in California or Florida, and you get that text message as soon as you make a purchase that says, you know, made a purchase and it's our fraud department, and we just want to make sure that there's nothing wrong, and please confirm that this purchase was actually you. So let's take that back and unwind that a little bit. Think about how many transactions are coming through a bank at any given point in time. For Bank of America, you know, it could be millions of rows of data that's coming through every second. But yet somehow when that purchase comes through on your bank account, that bank is able to recognize, hey, there's an anomaly here. There's something different with this purchase. So I'm going to shoot out a message and send it to you to make sure there's no fraudulent activity. That sort of process of taking big data, finding an anomaly, and turning that into an action is exactly what SAS does. So we could do this for you know, retail customers, ensuring that they're making sure that they're having the right sizes and inventory in store. There's so many different use cases, but hopefully that helps you conceptualize the analytics that are happening in that process. And so a little bit about SAS as a company. We were founded in 1976 at NC State. A professor actually received a grant to do some analytics on a small set of data that was agricultural data. And that project and that grant ended up turning into what is now a multi-billion-dollar in revenue company with global offices all across the world. So we are headquartered here in Cary, North Carolina, and we have over 14,000 people in over 150 offices globally, so definitely a large international company. And then one of the things that we're most known for is our workplace culture, where we have been recognized each year since the rankings have been out for Fortune and Forbes as a top employer to work in the top 10. So that's just a little bit about SAS and who we are and about big data analytics. So moving on, we want to talk to you a little bit about what's upcoming here. You have a big couple weeks coming up when it comes to events that the Career Service Center is hosting, and we want to prep you for that. So the very first thing we wanted to talk to you about is career fairs and the etiquette involved in attending a career fair. Some of you may have attended one before, some of you may have not, but there's a couple key components that us as employers will really help you ensure that your career fair is a success. So first, and it may seem a little bit quizzical, but a very strong, firm handshake can go a long way. It shows confidence as you're approaching the booth. It shows that you are professional and really ensuring that you are putting your best foot forward, because as the picture says, you will never get a second chance to make a first impression. Also along with that is knowing your elevator pitch. You should have about a 30 to 45 second overview about who you are, your key accomplishments, the things that make you stand out, which we'll talk about a little bit later in the presentation. Do your research, especially about the company and the roles. I know the Career Service Center does such a great job of giving you information on what employers will be at the career fair prior to the career fair taking place. So look at those companies. If it's a name that you don't know, at least research into the company, because it could be a really great company that you just have never heard of before. And then after you do your research on that company, narrow down to your top maybe 4 or 5 companies that just really caught your eye. And maybe have those be the companies you go to after you go to a couple companies that you aren't as interested in, and really be able to get your feet wet and feel comfortable by attending some of those other booths first. But walking up to that company, having done your research, and sharing that you know about the company and the roles really can help you be successful at the career fair. Thank the recruiters. This is one thing that when it happens for the recruiters, we definitely put a little reminder in our brain of that person, because it doesn't happen very often. But thank the recruiters for attending the career fair. Thank them for spending their time with you during the day, and a little bit of gratitude can go a long way. And know your audience. You're business students, so I'm sure a lot of this comes pretty innate to you, but it's okay to ask the representative and say, what do you do at your company? Just so you can get an idea of what their role is, so you can tailor your message and what you do appropriately to whoever that audience is. Especially if you're in an IT type concentration, or maybe your background is a little bit technical, ask if the person you're speaking to knows what some of the technical concepts are before just speaking to it. It shows a lot of emotional intelligence when you're able to prepare yourself in that way. And lastly, values, passion, and purpose. When you're walking up to that booth, to be able to explain who you are, what is important to you, what are your values, what are you passionate about, and what is your purpose for visiting that career fair booth. If you can nail down those 3 items, it's pretty certain that you'll have a pretty excellent elevator pitch to speak to who you are and why you're at the career fair that day. So let's talk a little bit about attire, and this is something that when you're on a college campus, you know, I remember my days of sweatpants and hoodies, but the career fair is really, once again, that opportunity to put your best foot forward and make sure that you're representing yourself in the way that you want to be seen. And I circled 2 of the photos here, but we'll chat through a little bit about the different attires that are listed here. On the left-hand side, they're typically explained as smart casual, so you can see some jeans, looking a little bit laid back, but still dressed up with, in some cases, button-downs and ties and blazers. A lot of employers, SAS specifically, we do kind of operate in the business casual realm. But what you're really going to want to dress in for your career fair is either going to be completely professional or at least business casual. So let's talk about those 2. In the center, that's definitely your business casual attire. You see some tops that are paired with skirts for the females, and for the males, you see a blend of some suits, but then also some dress pants and some nicer tops. That's what you call business casual. It's not necessarily very formal. It's not like you're walking into the boardroom of a very important meeting, but you're dressed nicely and you're putting yourself together in a way where you come off as very professional. The other one that's circled, that's going to be your business professional. That's going to be your full suits. If you don't own a suit yet, especially since you all are business majors, I would highly recommend coming to the career fair in a suit. And you can see there's different options for the ladies as well as the men in colors and whatnot. But just to reemphasize too here, and you can see in the top right, there's that casual. That's probably what you're used to going to class in or going to your student organization meetings in. And a lot of employers are casual organizations as well, and that's okay. You'll probably see some folks at the career fair as well representing their companies in casual attire, and that is okay. But when you're presenting yourself for the very first time, you'll definitely want to present yourself as professionally as possible. So although that may be the culture of the company, at the career fair, you're definitely going to want to stick to that business professional or business casual at minimum attire for the fair. A couple other small things that kind of maybe get pushed to the side, but ladies, pulling your hair back and ensuring your nails are well manicured. Men, making sure you have your fresh haircut or whatever the case may be to make you feel fully prepared from a visual standpoint. But you want to make sure that all of those little pieces, you feel like you're representing your best self and you're presenting your best self to the employers that are there. One thing that's not listed here as well is your padfolio. And presenting your resume in a way that isn't in a paper folder where your resumes are a little bit crumbled. That very first impression, as much as you can be prepared with your padfolio in hand, that's very professional itself, that has your resumes printed and ready. And then moreover, if that padfolio can have some sort of notebook where you're taking notes on the conversation, that shows that you're very well prepared for that conversation that you're about to have. All right, so this picture is probably making some of you giggle on the phone because I know sometimes the application process and going to a career fair can really feel exactly like this, that you meet somebody, you speak to a company that you're really excited about, you submit your application, and then it just falls into this black hole. And then it sits there, and in some cases employers get back to you sooner than others. But the second portion of this presentation, we really want to prepare you so that you feel like your resume is set up in a way that hopefully you can avoid that black hole. So from there, I'm actually going to pass it back over to Stephanie so she can talk a little bit about that application process and resume building.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kayla. So just to build on that, think of your resume as your personal brand, and this is your personal brand on paper. And just like Kayla has mentioned, you've got your personal brand visually, and your presentation when you walk up, give a firm handshake, you're very organized, you're dressed appropriately. This is now going to be your first impression, sometimes for recruiters if they're not at that career fair where they've met you in person, but definitely for hiring managers, interview teams, anybody that you may then be engaging with throughout the interview process. This is going to be their first impression prior to meeting with you, prior to even speaking with you on the phone. So what I want to share with you is to do your research on the role and making sure that your resume does have those similar keywords and responsibilities that are aligning to the job that you're applying to, because multiple resumes is okay. And that's really where on the left-hand side you're going to see skills and position and performance and experience. You really want to be very thoughtful on what you do share on your resume and making sure that it is going to align and through the keyword searching that we are naturally doing as recruiters, because we're getting thousands and thousands of resumes, both in paper at career fairs or even electronically, but then also through our applicant tracking system when you go and apply and create an application. So you really want to make sure you're very thoughtful on what you include and that it is aligning back to the organization and to the role and that job description, which is why that word is seen here so big, is because to really use that job description as your guide to then lead you through the organization of your resume, which will take us to the next slide of what does that organization look like, and to put yourself in the minds of recruiters and hiring managers that are looking at these all day, every day, trying to find that best fit. And so starting up at the top from just a formatting and design perspective, a great fact and data point that we wanted to share with you is recruiters spend about 10 to 15 seconds per resume. You take a second and just think about that. 10 to 15 seconds so that you don't end up in that black hole. So you want to make sure that everything is in place and that it is going to then resonate with those that are looking at it. So you want to make sure that you list your role first, followed by the company. Ensure that all of your dates and your formatting all are appropriate, and to the far left-hand side, to the far right-hand side, that all of the measurements along this side are all adequate, and you're leveraging the full piece of paper because that is most most important is that you want to make sure that it has that first appearance where someone says, yes, I want to now because it just looks very appealing. I want to get to dive into that experience a little bit more. And also the look and the formatting and the design show that unique element of you. Are you organized? Do you pay attention to the details? Maybe if you include, maybe you're a marketing major, or you've got just you've got a passion for design, and so you've got a little bit of your personality. But be careful. Don't do too much of that. Don't do too much formatting. Don't do too much design. But definitely being able to express yourself on paper is going to be really important through the formatting and the design. Making sure, too, that you have about one page, and that's for those that have about 3 to 5 years of experience or less, and that's going to be most of you guys as you progress through and you may pursue your master's degree or a PhD in the future. Definitely that length can increase, but you definitely want to go ahead, condense down, be very succinct in what you are saying, because you don't want to lose all of the great work that you've done, both professionally, academically, because there's just too much on the paper. So then don't forget the basics as well. I've seen more times than not, I've opened up a resume online and it's actually got all of the comments from career services or from a parent or a sibling that has helped them. So to make sure that that doesn't happen, you want to make sure you put it into a PDF file, making sure that you don't forget the important information, if that is your address, your email address, your phone number. The reason for those and the reason it's important for us is address is just, where are you? Will we need to potentially relocate you for the opportunity that we have? Are there people in the local area that we could have you meet with face-to-face? That email address and phone number are critical. Whichever email address you use most often, make sure that's the one on there, because we don't want to send something and then you actually end up coming back to us and saying, I never received anything, and you realize it was actually because that email address you're not using. The phone number as well, this just helps us. There are many times where you're likely going to get an email from us if you have been selected, but then we want to pick up the phone and have that conversation, and it just helps us streamline the process. Objective, it does add value. So think of this objective as your personal elevator pitch, just like Kayla has mentioned. And these can change and vary, just like your multiple resumes. This objective can change as well based on the company and based on the role or the opportunity that you're interested in. But be very careful. If you do change these and you have specific company names or you have specific opportunities, don't lose that attention to detail. We've also received those that have the incredibly wrong company with the wrong position. And what does that mean? It doesn't go to have that great first impression on paper. Be very specific as well, as specific as you can, because that's also going to help us when we're looking through and making sure that all the rest of your experience is then going to align back to that objective and what you're looking to seek from a role and a company perspective. And then the content. Think of this as, from level of importance to also making sure it's organized really nicely. If you end up having certain skill sets that are really important to you and also align directly to the type of role that you're looking for, if that is, there are some programming languages. Maybe you've got a minor in computer science or computer engineering. Maybe those technical skill sets, rather than being at the bottom, should be at the top. So just think of that as based on your role, based on the interests and your passions, what do you want people to see in that top third of the paper? But then also thinking of as well is your relevant experience and what can be considered experience. There's so much. Many people come up and say, well, I'm a freshman or I'm a sophomore and I haven't gotten an internship yet. That's okay. What have you done throughout high school or throughout your first few years of college that's really relevant? Is it volunteer service? Is it being actively involved in the community? Are there team projects in your classes and your coursework? What are some of those other areas that you can provide a lot of insight around your skill sets, your interests, who you are as a person, that can add value until you get that relevant experience that's going to be directly tangible to the work that you want to do in the long term. And then moving on, and the last bullet point is just the bullets should start with verbs. So take a look, and as you go, and you can leverage career services in your career development team. You can leverage recruiters as well as you build relationships. But you really want that content to be very clear, concise, and also start with action. Start with something that is really exciting. And some of those examples you will actually see, and we can actually share them with you at the bottom, but you can, or at the back of this presentation, or you can also do just a quick search online, and it's going to give you some great examples that you can use. So how do you stand out so that you don't fall into that black hole? We've gotten you to your resume and some of the unique qualities we're going to look for that are going to make us stand out on paper. But now how do you stand out in person? And the couple areas that I want to touch on are these that we've listed here. So passion is greater than experience. And what do we mean by that? We had a great example as we were just talking through this, and we said, you know, think of it as if you're a business student, but you end up programming at night because it's a passion, then share that with us, because that passion means that you're going to have a long-term passion. You're going above and beyond, but that's also going to trickle into the workplace as well. If you find a passion, you're going to do it on the side. You're not going to let it interfere with what you're here to do, but you're also wanting to always enhance and expand your skill set. So that passion, that energy is there is nothing that compares, and that could be greater than your own experience because it's something that's unique to you. Then next, resiliency and determination. So you're going to have to bend and stretch yourself, both personally and professionally. And there are times where it may feel a little uncomfortable. You're out of your comfort zone, but that's okay. Be determined and don't ever give up. There is just a quote that I always go back to myself and say, you know, don't ever give up. Pick yourself back up, smile, learn from the experience you have or learn from the mistake, and then be able to come back even stronger. And that's what that is be resilient, be able to bend and stretch both personally and professionally, but then no, you may not get that job the first time, or you may not get the interview the first time. That's okay. Pick yourself back up, give yourself a little bit of a pep talk and say, you know what, I'm going to come back even stronger and even better than I was the last time that they met with me. Connect with a recruiter or an employer. And the reason why we highlight connect is connect. Truly find that connection. And that could be that you truly do connect on LinkedIn or you connect via email. But we want you to connect with us during that time, if it's when you meet with us on campus or you come in for an interview or you're meeting with other employers and other settings. Try and find that common ground. Get to know us. We are people too, and we love to talk and we love to get to know you, and then it's so valuable for you to get to know us, because that's going to build a professional relationship where we recognize you when we come back out on campus, or we recognize you when we see you. We recognize you when your email comes across our inbox, and that makes you even more than just a candidate or a student at Virginia Tech. Now you are Stephanie Chalk, and I'm going to remember Stephanie Chalk, and I'm going to have an eye out for Stephanie Chalk. Show that you're more than a person. This goes exactly back to being able to connect. We want you to not just show who you are. We want us to tell us who you are as well. So on your resume or when you're in an interview, be able to speak to everything about what makes you you, what makes you unique. Show us that and be very engaging, because being able to tell your story and be engaged is going to say, wow, that person looks professional, acts professional, has a great first impression, and now they are being even greater because they can actually explain everything that we've actually seen on paper or we've seen throughout the interview process. And then next is build your personal brand. So just like I've mentioned, you're going to hear this. This is something I'm extremely passionate about because building your personal brand, think of Coca-Cola or Adidas or Nike. They are so recognized, and they have a brand that is recognizable. And you want your personal brand to be exactly that. When we meet you, that brand is, wow, she or he is, they are fabulous. They have great work ethic. Here's their great experience. You want that personal brand. So, but don't forget, we're going to build it on paper from a resume perspective, but don't forget about being online and also in person. So building that personal brand on your social media outlets, being very consistent, being very thoughtful on what you share and how you share it, both in paper, online, and in person, because that is going to align your career plan to what's going to connect to your values, passion, and purpose that Kayla mentioned earlier. And then the last piece here is ask for the job. So as you're asking for the job, many people think, well, I've submitted my application, I may have written a cover letter, I've shown up to some of my interviews, I've asked for the job, I'm interested in the job. Well, you are, but we want you to take that a step further. We really want you to say at the end of a conversation or at the end of an interview or even in a follow-up email is just to convey that I am very interested after the phone interview, after the conversation, or even in person when you're meeting face-to-face with somebody, to let them know that after all of this information I've received, after this interview, I am so incredibly interested in this role, in this company. How can I stay in touch with you to know about the next steps? Is there anything else that I can clarify to show you that I am the best fit for this role? You have now officially asked for the job because that's reiterating that you really want this. You've learned all about it. You've spent a lot of time with people, and you still really want that job. So don't forget to ask for the job, and you can ask for the job in a variety of different ways as well. So here, interviewing. So we've now gotten you all the way through from your career fair, prepping you for that, making sure your resume is going to be top-notch so you don't get stuck into that black hole, that you're going to stand out from both start to finish, so both paper, online, and in person. And now here you are at the interview. And what we want to really show you is here are some of your key areas that don't forget and some of those common mistakes that can happen, and we want to make sure that you're fully aware so that these don't happen to you for those that are on the line and will be seeing this. So always prepare questions. Very briefly, for always preparing questions is making sure that you have very different types of questions. If that's cultural questions, if that's questions about the role based on the job description you've read or based on previous interviews, if it's follow-up questions based on other conversations that you've had leading up to that current interview that you're in, always be very prepared. The biggest mistake I see many, many times is I ask and I give time, do you have any questions? And everyone says, no. What does that mean? It means that you've either not fully prepared or you just don't know what to ask, and that's okay, but think of some of the most popular questions. What do you enjoy most about your time at that company? Or why do you do what you do every day in your role? What are some of your challenges? Think of anything that, even though you may have gotten a lot of information, likely hasn't been asked or hasn't been touched on, because you always want to be prepared to have questions. Do your research, and a data point that we have is having little to no knowledge of the company is the most common mistake made during interviews. So do your research. You can go online. You can make sure that you can read financial reports. You can look on all of the articles that they're publishing. You can look on their testimonials on Glassdoor or LinkedIn. Do your research, and do your research outside of their career webpage as well, because you're going to find a lot of valuable information that can also lead back to asking very well-prepared and thoughtful questions. Some of those questions throughout the interview, they may be tough, or you may need time just to think about it. So do always remember that saying, I don't know, or I'm not sure, is perfectly okay. We'd rather have you say that you don't know, or you're not sure, or could you please repeat the question, or could I take a couple seconds to think about that, to really make sure that you are wrapping your mind around what the answer should look like or should be. And if you don't have an answer, don't make one up. It is definitely okay to say, I'm not too sure. Read the job description and come up with examples. How this is very, very important, just as you're preparing your resume for a specific role or company, you want to do this exact same thing when you are going into the interview, both phone, on-site, maybe it's group interviews, whatever the case is. Because on average, most interviews are about 30 to 45 minutes. That is on average, so no, there are going to be times where we have a couple hours or even longer. But on average, most interviews are anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes. And you want to make sure within that 30 to 45 minutes that you have made an impact. You have also highlighted your key experiences that are directly relatable to the job that you are interested in, because you would hate to walk away from that interview being like, oh, I wish I had said that, or I wish I had shared that experience, because I know that would have aligned to exactly what they were looking for in that candidate or for the experience perspective. So read the job description and narrow that down to have just a few examples to share that directly correlates back to the job description. Know your key wins and your few failures and be able to speak to it. So you're going to have it's very similar. You're going to have your strengths and your opportunities. You're going to have your big wins, and you're going to have those opportunities that just weren't the best for you. And that's okay. But the most important part is, how did you celebrate your wins? What did you learn from your wins? How did you carry that on for the future opportunities or the future work that you've been doing? And then also for the failures, we all have had failures, and we all have made mistakes along along the way. But the best way is, how did you handle that mistake, or how did you handle that failure? What did you learn from it? What did you make sure that you'll never make again? And so really what that question is asking, and many people will ask it during the interview process, is to see, how do you handle something that it's tough, it's uncomfortable to fail, it's uncomfortable not to do something exactly right. But we want to really engage with you to see how you will handle those circumstances. If it's on your resume, know how to speak to it. This is one of my biggest passions as well. Outside of your personal brand, I have come across many people. They'll have an extensive amount of detail on their resume, and I may happen to pick one or two key pieces out of that entire resume, and they're not prepared. They stumble. They don't have all the information that they probably should have had. Maybe it was stretching a little bit of what the role was, or the project was, or the impact that they had. So you really want to make sure that everything that's on your resume, you're very prepared. And so practice makes perfect there. If you need to go and practice, stand in front of a mirror. As silly as that may sound, it works. Get some of those jitters out, and really then make sure that all the content you're very familiar with, that you've put on your resume or you've put on your LinkedIn profile, so that you can then speak to it when you're in an interview. Go to your happy place. We all have a happy place. It's probably very different for all of us, but go to your happy place and clear your mind prior to an interview. Some people can get nervous, they can get stressed. We all handle interviews and conversations a little bit differently. So go to your happy place, calm, get relaxed, and get focused, and then be able to just knock it out of the park. And that's what we mean by going to your happy place. Answer questions specifically, yet very concise, and focus on how you added value. Those questions that you end up talking for 5 minutes and we walk away and we're just like, what did that person just say? Or what was the impact that they made? Or what was their key learnings? Making sure that your answer answers the question, and you take time to be very thoughtful on how you're going to answer it, but also that you're highlighting, your key attributes, what makes you unique, the value you added, the lessons you've learned, et cetera, to make sure that that question and every answer that you have was very impactful of who you are and how that's going to relate to the role or to the company. Don't always focus on you. So this goes for anybody that you meet. It's amazing what you will learn if you turn the questions back around to the person you're speaking to. They're going to be driving a lot of interviews, and even recruiters are going to be driving a lot of the conversation. But it's okay throughout the interview to ask a few questions. If they ask, what was your most difficult time in your first year of school? Or what was the most difficult time at your previous internship? Answer that question, be very clear and concise on your answer, but then follow that up with, I want to learn a little bit more about you. What are some of your challenges in your current role? And based on the questions that you then ask, you'll get to know a lot about that person, the company, the role, and some of those are going to be green flags, and it's like, yes, I want to work there, I want to work with that team, or some of them may actually raise red flags and say, this may just not be a fit for me, and it's all because you asked and took the time to ask questions and focus on the other person. And then think outside the box. Be unique. And really what I mean by be unique is don't give the same answer to everything. Both Kayla and I have mentioned that both of our companies have been recognized as being a great place to work year over year. And so if we were to ask the question of, well, what interests you about NetApp, or what interests you about SAS? Think outside the box. Don't say, well, I've heard it's a great place to work. You can definitely say that, but then have something else to follow up so that you are thinking outside of the box, and you're not the millionth person that has reminded us that we have a great culture. It's something that's very special to us, but we want to know a little bit more about who you are, or your interest in the role, or your interest in the company, and the way that you can showcase that is thinking outside of the box and being a little bit different than those. So here we are at questions, and we will open it up to each of you, and I will also turn it back over to Kayla.
Very good. Thank you, Stephanie. Yeah, I think that was just an amazing overview, and you guys should probably feel so well prepared for the career fair next week. But any questions that you have, please feel free to ask us. We are an open book, so anything you have.
Hey, Kayla and Stephanie, it's Jen. Thanks so much for that. That was packed full of tips and tricks that I think are super useful and super valuable for the students. I did get a couple questions that came into me privately, and I thought they were pretty good, especially based on Business Horizons. It's just coming up. So knowing that Business Horizons is pretty full, I think we have somewhere 160 booths that have been sold. There'll be a ton of students, a lot of employers I think that's where this question kind of comes into play. How would you guys recommend we talk with companies that maybe we didn't necessarily get to do research on beforehand, but we find ourselves in a conversation or passing by their booth at Business Horizons?
I would be happy to take that one, Steph. I think the most important part, it almost ties back to one of the points that Stephanie had made earlier in the presentation, is it's okay to say I don't know, and just being very transparent and stopping by that booth and saying, you know, my name's Kayla, and I stopped by your booth because I noticed that you're recruiting students in my major. I don't know much about your company in 100% honesty, but I'm here because I want to learn more. What does your company do? And open the dialogue in a way that you can learn first, and then you can kind of insert yourself thereafter. I think really showing that transparency and showing the why and your purpose for stopping at the booth could help set the expectation right up front that you haven't done your research, so it doesn't come across as strange a little bit later in the conversation. Stephanie, is there anything that you'd want to add to that?
Absolutely. You couldn't have said it better.
Well, thank you.
Great, thank you guys. And then I have two more, but I think I'll tie them together. I think they kind of fit in together. So the first one is, if we don't, if a recruiter does not give us a business card, is it appropriate to ask for a business card or additional contact information? And then what is your, as recruiting professionals, what is your preferred method of follow-up after we've met you at the career fair?
Sure. I'll take this from a NetApp perspective, and then I'll also let Kayla share from a SAS perspective as well. So for us, you actually will likely, we're going to hand out business cards, but they don't have my personal contact information on that. And the reason for that is we, as you guys will know and notice very quickly, we meet hundreds of thousands of people. And so if we were to honestly give out our personal contact information, it would be very hard to manage to get back to everybody. And we would hate to not get back to you and answer questions that were very important to you. So what we have is we actually are going to hand you a business card, and it's going to have a generic email address that you can actually send to us. It goes to our entire team. And if we see that there are questions in there, our whole entire team will be able to answer those questions for you. And so based on that, don't be overwhelmed if you're not getting contact information, because many recruiters, most likely HR professionals, recruiters, even some hiring teams that are out there will likely not give you their personal information until you're through the interview process, just given that the sheer amount of people that we have applying. So it's nothing personal to you, but what you can ask is that exact great question is, how should I follow up with you? And the best way that I always mention is, my name is Stephanie Chalk. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. You can follow our company pages both on Twitter and on LinkedIn. And so that way we can stay in touch. And then once we meet you and I begin to develop that relationship and I'm truly connecting, where I had said that those words were bolded, I will likely then, as I'm building a relationship, then give you the kind of that more personal touch to extend an offer to reach out to me and leverage me. But also, I will say the one plug that I would also say here is, outside of the career fair, find out other ways that you can engage with that employer. If it's coming to an info session, a student organization event, if it's coming to a tabling event that may be held in your atrium, because in those more personal, kind of one-on-one intimate settings, that's also where you will be likely to get personal contact information when it's not at a career fair and we're meeting with thousands and thousands of people.
Yeah, now it's my turn to give you kudos. Stephanie, you hit the nail on the head, too. That is exactly SAS's perspective. The only small point that I would add is that some employers, I think it's 100% appropriate to say, what is the best way that I follow up with you? Because some employers are structured in a way that they do have the resource capacity to get back to every email. And when it comes to NetApp and SAS, we're kind of a little bit of a lean university recruiting program, so we don't unfortunately have the capability of getting back to every student, but there may be some employers that do. So it's 100% fine to ask that question and to reiterate, just, you know, knowing that it's not personal. If you connect and send a message to a recruiter on LinkedIn and you don't hear back, just keeping in mind that they stop at multiple universities, talk to so many students, that unfortunately managing that and sometimes managing a work email along with text messages, and we're people too, so we have things like Snapchat and Instagram and all of that. Managing all those different messages flying in can be a little bit daunting. So yeah, that just reiterates what Stephanie had shared.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Stephanie and Kayla, for all your insights and all your tips. I know this is a super, super busy time of year for you guys, so we really appreciate you taking the time to share this information with our students. And students that are listening, thank you so much for your participation on this call. If you found it valuable, please share with your friends that you listened. We're going to be sending this out to all students. So I encourage you to not only take advantage of these tips, but definitely follow up and do some research on NetApp and SAS. Perhaps there could be opportunities within these organizations that interest you as well. If you guys have any follow-up questions that occur after we end this call, please feel free to reach out to me. My email is just jcarty, C-A-R-T-Y, @bt.edu, and I'd be happy to answer any questions for you as we approach kind of the home stretch here before Business Horizons next Thursday. So thank you, everyone. This will conclude the call. I appreciate all the participation.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.